Hello, and welcome to Shelf Life from the Virginia Festival of the Book, featuring live-streamed author events every Tuesday and Thursday. I'm Sarah Lawson, Assistant Director of the Virginia Center for the Book, a program of Virginia Humanities. Thanks for joining us. In a moment, I'll hand the program over to our speakers, but first, a couple notes. There will be some time for questions, so please post your questions on Zoom or Facebook as you have them, and we'll make sure they get to the authors. If you haven't already read today's book, we hope you will. For details about how to buy it from a local bookseller or check on a copy from your library, visit vabook.org, where you can also explore the full schedule of our upcoming virtual events. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Laura Lee Gulledge, the Eisner Award-nominated author of YA graphic novels, The Dark Matter of Mona Starr, Will and Wit, and Page by Page, as well as the interactive book, Sketchbook Dares. She's based in Charlottesville, and you can learn more about her work at whoislauralee.com. She'll be joined by Amber Loyacano, a high school English teacher in Waynesboro. Amber is passionate about reading and finding the perfect book for every student. You can follow her on Instagram at Amber_reads_everything. Laura Lee's new book, The Dark Matter of Mona Starr, is the story of a creative and sensitive teenager who is struggling with depression. Through therapy, art, writing, and the persistence of a few good friends, Mona starts to understand how she can turn her fears into strengths. Laura Lee, Amber, thanks for joining us for Shelf Life. Tell us more about Mona.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here and to have this virtual Virginia Festival of the Book experience. I guess Mona is a young adult graphic novel. She is very much like me in high school, where she's a little geek girl and orchestra, and likes to draw and write. But she is struggling with depression, which I personify as the matter in the book. It's sort of like a spilled ink bottle in my mind. And thankfully, it's not a huge bummer, because I was scared about making a book about depression and it would be depressing. So it ended up more a story about hope and healing and a surprising Artner love story. So I hope that young people and adults can relate to it alike, because I think we're all feeling a little depressed and anxious. And it's like everybody gets to experience what it's like to be a highly sensitive person right now. So I'm sorry, and here's some books for you.
I definitely think we're all in that together, that's for sure. I had the pleasure of kind of going down the rabbit hole of your internet life right now, and there's so much interesting stuff that you've been doing. I really think everyone should go watch at least part of your virtual book tour on YouTube. It's so much fun to see like how much is involved in your art world. It's intimidating, but really interesting. Yeah. So I was wondering how your artistic nature and your writer kind of brain work together to create these beautiful graphic novels. Like, how do you feel your art and your writing pair?
And that is a big question right there. I love it. I'm just diving in. Because I guess I never realized that the art I was making for years, because I was doing more standalone illustrations for my 10,000 hours. I had never read a graphic novel. I love newspaper comics and animated films, but graphic novels weren't really around in the 90s, at least targeting readers like me. So I figured out way later that all the different things I were drawing were actually scenes from a story. And it really challenged me to change about thinking about an idea as one image, telling a whole story, and shifting gears to thinking sequentially, like, okay, we're going to draw out multiple scenes in a row, like stringing beads on a necklace. So so I've never taken a class in comics or illustration or creative writing. And it's one reason I like to teach about this process, because just for me to figure out how to pull ideas out has been like a psychological experiment. And I think it's so healing, and it's such a resource that I feel lucky to be able to access. So I'm very much about having different ways to combine words and pictures. And some people start with words and some people start with pictures. I start with pictures because I'm a visual learner. So I have to first draw my character, and I'll start by using these cork boards and sort of starting by going by scenes and just drawing little out of order thumbnail sketches, and then physically moving them around. Because I find what's confusing is that you can see all the different elements of your story, but the order is what is hard for me. It's like, well, where do we start? How do I go from one thing to another? And what's a scene from maybe another book? that I think I'm trying to force into this one. So it's a little interesting. It's like it goes back and forth between the pictures and the words. And so I find that it's hard to focus on one because they sort of are doing both, like holding hands with both. It makes your belly hurt.
I find it fascinating that you have no training, because I felt the flow of your from page to page and your use of space was just absolutely beautiful and like took me on the journey so well. So that's amazing. Do you mind maybe sharing a little bit? Because I know not everybody has been able to get a hold of your book at this time. Could you share some of it with us so we can all see the beauty together?
Yeah, I don't know if you'd like me to do a reading of a chapter.
That would be wonderful if you're willing.
Because I pulled out a chapter from the middle. It's one because I haven't been able to do a lot of school visits since the book came out, as you can imagine. But this is one I read with a group of young people, and it seemed to resonate. So let me screen share. It's a little challenging to read a graphic novel, but I will do my best. Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Chapter 4, Draw It Out. This is when Mona is fallen down the sad well of depression. I can't close the doors and I can't turn away. This is what happens to me when I think too much. But while I'm here, I might as well make the best of it. Because when I'm down the well, sometimes you can actually do some exploring. So what does my matter feel like? Symptoms. Let's see, insomnia, melancholy, racing thoughts. And how does it affect my interactions with others? Well, I become a bad listener. These posters are great, Mona, thanks. Yeah. Errors, storage full, brain at capacity. I stop expressing myself. She's throwing away her speech bubbles, like I think, I feel, I hope. Plus, there's unpredictable mood swings. Yay! Now Mona's with her therapist. What do you think might have triggered your outburst? Well, I have to decide my classes for next year, which means I need to pick my path to college, a career, and my whole freaking life. I know I shouldn't complain as a privileged white American, but the choices just don't feel right. And it's a little path, straight line of high school, college, job, house, marriage, kids, retire, and death. It probably doesn't help that another of your matter's symptoms is indecision and doubt. And her matter is talking to her there saying, you have no purpose, you're not good for anything, you have nothing special to offer anybody. Who do you think you are? That's a big one. You're nobody. Just step aside and be quiet and let everyone else do the talking. I just feel pulled in too many directions. Do I want to be a journalist, podcaster, writer, art therapist, story artist, teacher, farmer, nomad? I feel like I don't fit in anywhere. It's okay if you don't. Maybe you're part of the next thing. Perhaps your path ahead is still being carved out as we speak, which is what happened for me in graphic novels. Or perhaps it just hasn't revealed itself yet. Your choices will lead you there one by one. Even if I make the right choices, it feels pointless when our society and environment feel on the verge of collapse. That sounds like your matter talking. Perhaps, but also logic. Yes, it is a scary time right now, but I haven't given up hope yet. Let's bring you back into the present with some meditation, okay? For the present is the only thing we have control over. And then her therapist starts to lead her in a meditation. First, find a comfortable seating position. Feet on the floor, eyes closed, back straight. Now take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. Focus on your breath. Feel the air fill your lungs, creating more space with each breath. And I have little thoughts in there, and then her breath is pushing them aside. When thoughts come into your mind, let them float away. Her thoughts are things like, this is pointless. Why am I doing this right? My leg itches. What time is it? If it's really important, it will come back later. And I'll end with this page, even though it's not the whole chapter. Now imagine that you have roots grounding you down to the earth and branches reaching up to the sky. With your next exhale, send all your negative thoughts and worries down your body and into the ground. Are you okay? Oh yeah, I'm sure it's nothing. Nothing is the matter. Ho, ho, ho. I'll stop the chapter there, even though it keeps going. But
I loved that first breathing scene. I felt myself doing it with Mona and you just now. I was like, oh man, I'm on camera. I have to make sure I'm not looking silly. But every time she did it during the graphic novel, I did it too. And I was like,
really?
it really worked. It was really, really cool. And I feel, and even listening to you now, I hear my students' voices like through Mona, like, wow, that is like so and so, or I have heard those exact words from this kid.
Yeah, young
So
people we need stories that talk about real stuff, because I love escapism. Like, I love going down a rabbit hole of some Netflix and being on another planet or whatnot. But I need stories to help me stay here more than to escape from here. At least when I was younger, because you can get lost up in here.
I feel like it's rather rare in the YA world too, to really just stay in that kind of reality of things. It's not about a love story. It's not, trying to fight off a zombie. It's really just about Mona figuring out Mona. And I loved that. So
like
I was wondering,
almost.
yeah, right. So how did you choose this genre, like the YA genre? What drew you to it? Like, are you trying to help certain kids, or is it just the style that you like? What speaks to you about it?
Storytellers, I feel like we're so transparent. Like, I am targeting middle school because, well, I used to teach middle school. I first started my career as a public school art teacher. It was actually teaching them that made me brave enough to go figure out what my art thing was, because I could answer some of their questions, and even some of my own questions about what good does art do in the real world, and how do you actually make a living, and questions like that. And so I've always loved that age, because that's when I decided that my voice was that art was kind of selfish and frivolous and unpractical and all these things. And also I was scared, because I thought it seemed really scary to sign up for like an uncertain life, which is sort of, life is constantly changing. And I wanted like security and, all that. So I love to do school visits and, normally, because I want to be that role model that I needed, someone to say, hey, you, like, you have permission to do this, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're just, because if you don't see yourself reflected in characters or in other people around you, you assume that there's something wrong with you, and that maybe I shouldn't show that part of me. And I think the comics and YA in particular, you see this flood of storytellers coming in who are creating the characters that are them, that they haven't seen reflected back. Because comics, it doesn't matter, where you went to school. I think it's the most blue collar of all the art forms, because the only ticket is time. It's like putting your butt in the chair and drawing, and there's an authenticity, because it weeds out if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, because who's going to put up with all this drawing work? It's very tedious.
Oh, I can only imagine. It seemed like so many layers on top of layers while I was reading through. But I feel like the work you put in makes it so accessible for a younger audience. And so I appreciate that. And I think that that's really, really neat. My personal art question, because as I told you in an email, I'm not really an artist. I'm a crafter. I do crafty things, which is art, but it's a little bit different. So when I was looking through your books, I just felt really, really connected to your use of shadow and just the darkness, because most of it's bright and white. You do a lot of black on white and just a little bit of yellow in Mona. But what draws you to that kind of use of shadow and like darkness in your text?
Well, shading is my favorite part. I feel like I complain about every step of the process. I'm like, oh, penciling is the worst. Oh, the script writing is the worst. But shading, I'm like, I like shading. Because to me, that's more, I'm sculpting the world. Because I feel like my art process for me is, because some artists, I mean, it's all different how we all access ideas, and they're all, you know, even not every idea is the same. But for me, I feel like I'm sort of fleshing out the image, like pulling it out of, like, I don't know, the darkness of my subconscious. It's sort of bridging this inner world, outer world. It's part of this bridge I've been trying to sit between my whole life, of how to be in both worlds at the same time. And something about shading and like slowly layering it and having this inner conversation of where I'm just pushing things back in the frame and bringing things forward in the frame. It's like this, I don't know, that's the part where I see it like unfold. And I think that's one reason also I like doing it analog rather than shading digitally, because I feel like there's this magic to it where I'm using a tree and I'm drawing on another tree, and I'm like, you know, painting, and I'm using gravity to help me move it around the paper. And I just, yeah, I feel like a lot of younger artists are more into the digital tools, which I'm sure if I got into would be like super awesome. But I just love I don't know, like I really fight for it when you're doing it in real life and there's no undo button. Like, it's much more this conversation. And of course I like the light and dark, because I'm like a lot of people confronting my shadow self and, you know, trying to understand aspects of myself that I have kept in the shadows. And I'm sort of like pulling them in here, like, we're going to shine a light on you so we don't feel ashamed about you anymore. Because once you put it down on paper and like, oh, here's my matter, then it's like, oh, that's not so bad, you know.
I do love that you gave it a name in this text, the dark matter, because I was able to get a hold of Will and Wit as well, which I really love that book, especially how much Charlottesville. Yeah, Charlottesville is like so central, and I'm like, oh my God, I know that place. I kept showing my family. I was like, look, I know that place. But the darkness really started there. It just didn't have a name yet, and I thought that was so neat how they kind of like connect in a way. I thought that was really cool.
Definitely. It's sort of, I feel like I was doing there's a musical version of Will and Wit that my partner and I are actually working on adapting as a virtual show, so we can license it as virtual. And I remember we were doing a workshop, and one of the students were like, so what are the shadows? And I was just like, what does the show even mean? And and so I feel like I wanted to take it to the next level with Mona, because I feel like I sort of prodded a topic of like, okay, my shadow self. And I was like, well, I didn't fully surrender to it, because it's scary. So I was like, okay, this time we're going to like get in it. We're going to do stuff we've never drawn before. We're going to be as vulnerable as possible. We're going to have scenes in bathrooms and scenes in the hospital. We're going to have Mona vomiting and crying and all the things that are like hard to draw. So I wrote myself a really hard script. I wrote the script not thinking about I would have to draw it. I was like, we're just going to write the script, and then future me will have to deal with it.
You always
myself.
Or future you. Yeah. We always do that to ourselves.
I divide myself. I'm like past tense, future, present me. So I'm always trying to set up future me for something, you know.
I love that. So you just mentioned Artners, and I find that whole world fascinating. So can you talk to us about Artners and how, like, I don't know, somebody like me could become one? Because it sounds fun.
You probably already have Artners in your life. You just don't use that word. Well, it's like the matter. I like to make up words. If there's not label, it's like if you don't see a character that represents you, you make it, you know, create it. And if you don't have a label that fits you, we're in a time where people can make up new words and new language. So Artner is our word for collaborator. I came up with it with my partner, Laura Larkin, because we were doing a 6-month collaboration when I was working on Will and Wit, because I was not in a good mental place. Neither was her. We were both struggling with burnout and breakups and trying to find a way to thrive as creatives. And at the end of it was like, we were like, we need a better word, because collaborator doesn't fit. We're much more intimate. Like, we're like family. It's almost like lovers when you're creatively vulnerable with somebody. There's a lot of trust. So we came up with Artners after a few other reject names. And now we have a whole language, you know, so we're polyartnerous, because you can have multiple Artners, and you can date your Artner, then you're like sweetheartners. And if you're craftsy, then you're artsy partners, you know, like
I'm so into that. I love it so much. It was such a cool phrase. And I knew what it, as soon as I read it, it's like, I get it. Like, I
Yeah,
know what that
I
means.
love
And I just
art.
think that it's so beautiful. Um,
I need that sort of love in my life and to have a label for it, because if we put all the pressure on romantic love, you're ignoring all these other kinds. And I needed a word for art. Like all my friends in marching band, I was like, what do I call my family? My, you know.
and that's what I loved, that was kind of the focus of the dark matter of Mona Star too, was just those relationships. Oh, and building those, it was just, it's so nice to see something that's not just a romance love, because
Yeah.
we do love all kinds of people for all kinds of reasons. I do want to interrupt real quick because I don't want to forget to say this, because I think it's important. We're talking about this book that's amazing and it's a hard time to get a hold of things. But if you're interested in reading The Dark Matter of Mona Star, it is available on the Freeding app, FREADING, through the Jefferson Madison Regional Library or your local library. I actually was able to read it on the Libby app through my Stanton library. You can also purchase it in other books by yourself at your local booksellers, and there's a link on IndieBound. But I just thought that would be really good to mention because it is available in all kinds of ways and you can get a hold of it.
I know New Dominion has it.
Oh, excellent.
New Dominion Bookshop.
Do you, since we're talking about Artners, and I'm just going to ask the question because that's easier for me because I'm a teacher and that's what I do. Okay. One of the scenes in the graphic novel really kind of spoke to me about the times, and it was the falling down the well, how we're all kind of down a well right now. What are your suggestions for young adults, for grown-ups, for anyone during this kind of difficult time? And yeah, oh, you're so good. Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful.
Down the well.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
It was such a great metaphor, and you didn't know what was going to happen, but it worked so well. So is there any like Artner kind of idea or anything you've thought of that will help with that kind of feeling right now?
Well, if you want to Artner, really, it sort of is the same thing as the well question. It's both about asking for help. Because I find that when I try to Artner with someone, really, I'm admitting that I'm not going to do something all by myself. And that's really what it is. Because if you're in total control, if you are making art like on your own, which a lot of us do. So you're like revealing your belly. You're making yourself vulnerable to ask for help. And it's really scary and hard. And sometimes you have to like reach out multiple times. So I think that's sort of the key, is just admitting that you're not in this alone, that there are other people in your world. And for me, I would advocate everyone to make a self-care plan, because that's something that I've used to help hold myself accountable and also share it with the people in my life so they can help encourage me to do the things that I need as a highly sensitive person. And I actually did an art activity at the launch party about climbing out of the well, where I sort of prompt you to basically make lists, because that's a lot how you make a self-care plan, is just making lists of the people who help you, the people in your support system, then the things that help you emotionally, mentally, and physically. And I like to use metaphor because that's what I do. I'm very Carl Jung in that way. I like to speak in archetypes. And so as an art activity, I decided to do collage, just because collage is nice when you're not totally focused, like right now. So in the book, I use different metaphors for climbing out of like ropes and bricks and balloons, but also ladders. So it could be other metaphors too, like maybe wings or pogo sticks. I don't know, some other whatever metaphor you want to use. Mm-hmm. So I did collage and did like one where it's like, oh, here's like a ladder. For these, I just used a dark sheet of paper and a light sheet of paper, and the dark as the background, and like drew on sort of, what my well is, and then cut out the light paper and put on top. So these are some hands. Then this is like balloons. This one I did more of like a starry dark background. Yeah, I just started to write in on them because I was like, oh, I should write on them. But these are things like hiking, baths, dance, reading, hot tea, comedies, like things that help pull me out. And the next level of this exercise is to, instead of using plain paper, to cut out things that represent what helps you climb out. So like I redid the hand one, but using nature. So you could push this more, like maybe choosing a background that represents what is pulling you down. So it's just a fun, it's an easy to adapt metaphor, and it's actually something that I've seen like multiple other cartoonists and storytellers draw about. Like when I saw Get Out and I saw the sunken place, I was just like, oh, I drew the same thing. Like,
you really did. Oh my gosh, that is
like
what I was imagining. Yeah, that's funny.
I was just like, but I don't feel like unoriginal. It reminds me like we're talking about things that are invisible. And if it's just you feel really odd. But if it's a conversation and multiple people are talking about it, then it makes me feel more bold. So like, well, let's just push this more. Because I know it's not just about me, that other people, that we're all experiencing stuff. And I just happen to be able to think in metaphors and draw about it. So.
I think in metaphors, but I'm an English teacher, so that's literally my job. But I can never figure out how to express it in that way. And I love that you're focusing on the positive, and that's part of Mona's journey too. And I feel like all of our journeys right now is we keep listing the things that are holding us into the well, pulling us down, all the negative. But if we list literally all these wonderful things in our lives, the number is outstanding, like all of your balloons. I thought that was beautiful. I think that's really
I feel like that when you make art about like the sadness, because I know when I get an idea, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling like anxious, and I make a drawing about anxiety, and it sort of can make me more anxious because I'm like really focusing on it. So I always challenge myself to draw the solution. So a lot of times I'm drawing something that's ahead of me. I'm drawing a wish, like I'm going to find a spin to it. So I'm doing it as almost like a magic act where I'm trying to, because you can think something logically before it sinks in. So I'll basically use logic, like, well, how can we spin this? And let's draw that. And so I'm like showing myself a different way to look at it. So maybe my heart can actually believe it. So
that's I love that idea of drawing a wish, or even thinking about a wish if we're not drawers. Like there's something to aim towards, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's like for creative, our job is not just to be a mirror of what there is. It's like to see past it and imagine like, oh, what else could this be?
Absolutely. So we have a question from Haley, which I think is a good question for you. Have you written anything besides graphic novels, and what are you working on right now? I feel like that question could probably be a very big one for you because you're probably working on lots of things.
I'm working on a lot of things. There's so many projects. I guess I have written the non-graphic novel I published is an interactive sketchbook, so it's more it's basically a curriculum, that I designed that anybody can use. And I've written scripts for other story ideas that have gotten nowhere and are sort of sitting on the back burner. So I don't know about those. But yeah, I guess if I'm not doing graphic novels, I tend to go more towards pictures, or lately it's been movement. I've been more into dance as a creative outlet, just as a balance for all this head work. So actually, I don't see myself doing more of just writing because it's not the most mentally healthy world for me to be in, because I feel like when I tie into other disciplines, then I burn out less because I'm using other parts of my brain than just my logical obsessive side deep dive. But I am working on a book that's about partnering actually right now. So that's the one that's in the works. And then the musical, I'm going to edit that script for a virtual version. So that's going to be a chopping up the baby. So yeah, those are the front burner projects right now. And I'm moving in like 2.5 weeks. So.
Oh, no big deal. That's fine.
Yeah. 2020.
It is an interesting time for sure. we're gonna, if anybody wants to ask questions, this will be a good time to type them up just so we have them at the end. But you mentioned dance and we had a little plan and I think it would be really fun. So in the graphic novel, Mona has a lot of anxiety about things and her friend really wants her to get up and dance and kind of express herself. And she's like, no, thank you. I'm not really into that right now. And they said, well, how about a marker dance party? And just the stuff in my brain just went, oh my God, that sounds like so much fun. So I talked with Laura Lee a little bit ahead of time, and we're hoping, gorgeous, that we can have a little marker dance party with the people involved in this world right now. So anyone who is watching or listening can participate, and then we can all kind of be partners together, which would just is the icing on the cake for this. So what do you think we should do, Laura Lee?
Well, if you would like to dance with us, you can grab some paper and some markers. And our song that we're going to dance to, we wanted to do like a super oons oons song, but we're scared about licensing. So we're going with a song that I actually got permission to use in the Mona trailer. It's by Ships in the Night. It's by a local musician, Alethea Leventhal. And it's called World Gone Cold. And it's not super like oons oons. It's a little more like, oh, chill.
Swirly. It's swirly.
Yeah. So, and I'll sort of talk while we go along too. But I like to think of your pens as more like, basically you're just moving your hand to the beat and finding different rhythms in the song and allowing your hand to just move in sync with it, almost like a figure skater on your page. So I'm going to start with one marker and then go from there.
I must say, I've been really excited about this. I ordered special markers from my local toy store, Puffer Bellies, that I had delivered to my house just for this. So really excited. So I'm going to play the song, which was part of the trailer, and we'll do some partnering together.
I'll probably go through a couple sheets of paper. It starts off slow. So I'm just gonna go along with. Oh. Oh, here. Actually, I'm gonna do markers. So I'm just listening for different rhythms in there and going along with them. Got 3 markers. I'm gonna go lower head. I'm gonna use all the markers. And I'm not concerned over what it looks like. I'm just having fun. Maybe moving your body a little bit. Oh, then she gets like super spacey, like. Oh, I want to see what you're drawing here.
This is what I'm drawing. I don't know if we can see it, but it's been fun.
Oh, I thought, are you turning it off?
Yes, I am evidently. Yeah.
It's a
I did not know I
masterpiece.
was going to do that. That's gorgeous. I love that. So
Sometimes
can
I
we
forget
see
to
your,
display
yeah,
when
can you see
the
what you
art
did?
is, I think my second one turned out. The second one. Whoa.
That's so very cool.
Yeah, so it's just different shapes and patterns. And it's like just allowing your hand to move where it wants to and not thinking about, well, what am I supposed to draw? It's more just following, like letting your intuition do the drive, which means it might look ugly, and that's fine.
And that is okay. I just wanted to know if there was anything that you wanted to talk about, because I feel like I've done a lot of questioning and you have done so much touring and wonderfulness with this book. Is there anything that you wanted to say to the people or to ask or talk about?
Oh, I guess I can share that I have, well, I just posted the YouTube, like the playlist of all the book tour. And I'll be adding this on there is Unofficial Extra Stop. But I do have one more video event coming up. It's June 5th with the Fralin. It's a virtual mindful art workshop. So I put info about that in my blog. And I also going to have a comics camp coming up. I was going to have it in person at McGuffey Art Center, but for known reasons, we're not going to do that. So I'm going to have it on Zoom, and I've come up with a version that's really fun where I'm going to send snail mail ahead of time so they can get my pencils and have a guest partner, and yeah, it'll be fun. So comics camp, I'll have the younger ones June 15th to 19th, and then the older ones the following week. So comics camp. Those are my shout outs for what is coming up next.
That's perfect. I think that, I can only imagine. I have an 8-year-old and she would just dig you. I think that she would have so much fun. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for having
Awesome.
me.
Well, I had a really good time and I had a really wonderful time being introduced to your work. So I think that anyone who uses this as a platform to get in and deep dive into your art will just be very thankful for this. So thank you, Laura Lee. And with that, it's time for us to wrap up things. Thank you to everyone who turned in for today's live stream. Please consider buying Laura Lee's books from your local booksellers and following her on all of her social media platforms. You can also check out future Shelf Life events from the Virginia Festival of the Book, taking place every Tuesday and Thursday at noon, and you can learn more at vabook.org.
Excellent. This has been a lot of fun.
This has been great.
And I'm going to do more marker dance parties. Thank you for inspiring me. And hey, guess what? We're now partners.
Oh, that's so exciting. Oh, that makes my heart flutter. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Love it. Oh, yeah, we're definitely going to have some marker art parties probably later today. I wouldn't be surprised.